Good afternoon, you remarkable people, and welcome to another episode of Out of the Blue. I'm really excited about this episode today. We're joined again by Dean and David. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Dino. I'm going to have to do that every time, sorry.
And as David is gesticulating there, we've got another opportunity to pick Dean's brain and his design expertise. And the reason I'm so excited today is because this is a topic that actually I'm quite fascinated by and was quite surprised at the depth to which you can go into this. So we're looking today, Dean, at the psychology of colour.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, I'm a specialist at this because I'm completely colourblind, so I'm definitely the right person to be hosting this episode. But basically, I think what occurred to me when we started looking at this and when I saw the sort of work that you produced was, as I say, the depth at which you can go into colours and choosing colours for schools. And so often we see schools that'll have a website, for example, that's red and everywhere's red. And when you sort of question that and you find out why, it's, well, the uniform's red, so we use red on everything. And there's no real explanation behind that. There's no, that's kind of it. That's been the whole rationale behind it. So what would be great is for you to kind of explain that process that you go through. So when you're first introduced to a school and you get to know them, where do you start? How do you start thinking about the colors that you're going to use when you're designing, the work that you produce for them?
I think it may be best if we actually look at a specific school's logo that we've actually created.
Great, yeah.
Possibly looking at Rolf's Nursery School. So we did a rebrand for them not too long ago. You can see this on screen now.
Just like magic.
Just like magic. So really, we did a discovery call with them, as we would do every project, just to really get to the bottom of who they are, because they've really evolved over time. And then their current logo that they had, it really didn't reflect who they were anymore. So for me personally, I always design with the color palette first. So I will always look at the color palette first because of the psychology behind it, which we'll get into. It can really push those emotive feelings around the brand that we're trying to really create. So on that discovery call, we would obviously get to the bottom of who they were, what makes them tick, what they deliver, and really a full sense of who they are. So once we've obviously gathered that and we've gathered those remarkable traits of who they are, I would start the branding process by looking at that color palette first. So with Rolf's, on that call, we actually found out that they are located right by Portobello Market, which is not too far from where I was born and raised. So really that color palette, as you can see on screen, it's inspired by that location. But it also gives a subtle nod to their diverse and urban environment, which they allow their children to explore. So for example, they took a little trip down to a Spanish deli, and wrote him a really nice note and all of that kind of thing. So it was really inclusive of their community. So as you can see, the little brand accents and those kind of things from the different languages and whatnot, that was obviously a nice inclusion there of that brand and overall sense of community. But in terms of the color palette, it obviously is a reflection of the Portobello Market. And on screen right now, you can see the different houses, how they're more like diluted pastel tones. But then if we actually pick out 3 of those colors, so for example, the blue. Now, as a parent, my little boy, Camden, he's coming 3 in August. If I'm going to a nursery school, or like Rolf's, they are a nursery school. If I was looking to my son to go to that school, I would obviously want them to be trustworthy. I can depend on them, and that there's a real sense of responsibility and really allowing me to feel relaxed. The color blue does exactly that. It does showcase that trust and dependability. It's also reliable, it's responsible, it's mentally soothing. It's really overall a really well-liked color, and it can bring that sense of calmness into that brand. So that's obviously why we've chose the main color to be that nice pastel blue. And then if we look at green, for example, it really pushes that balance of harmony and growth. And obviously you want your child to grow while they're in school. So we've brought that into the color palette. And then lastly, before I stop rambling and give you two a chance to speak, orange, it has a really interesting psychological meaning behind it, because it really combines the red's power and energy with yellow's friendliness and fun. So the orange is really a beautiful color to represent motivation and positive attitudes and really enthusiasm. So those three colors, they kind of sum up in a way. Obviously there's a few other colors there, but I won't go into too much depth because we want these to be a bit snappy. It really sums up who they are. It really sums up their remarkable traits of what type of school they are, what type of nursery school they are. So you can definitely see that the way you look at the Rolf's branding, the colors are really that starting point, because without those colors, it would have a completely different feel to it.
I think people would be quite surprised that you would always start with the colors.
Yeah.
And so if you were working on a project with a school that didn't have, wasn't able to give you sort of brand guidelines, and maybe didn't have a brand that's as well developed as that, would you still start with color? If you were creating a prospectus or a website, would you still look at creating a color palette to work from?
Yeah, I mean, every school's completely different. And in the episodes as we go on, we'll be looking at how to best represent yourself and your logo and these kind of things. I think everything starts with that emotive response, and color is a big key in that for me. If you want your brand to come across quite corporate, you may use deep tones of blue because you want to show that trust and dependability of the brand. But then if you wanted it to come across a little bit more warm and welcoming, you may use a little bit more of a yellows, oranges, kind of pastel tones to your brand. So if a school didn't have a color palette, but they had a logo, I would kind of want to know the rationale behind their color palette that they already have in place. Obviously, your logo is going to be some sort of colors. And if it didn't really align with the school, I would maybe try and suggest a color palette that would work alongside that logo.
Yeah, I think to be fair, you quite often, or we quite often look at what a school's logo currently looks like and what they've got, and if they haven't had a logo professionally designed, and I say professionally with some rationale behind it, so it has a meaning, and there isn't a color palette, then we would, you quite rightly said, we would start with a color palette and make that suggestion that we change the color palette so actually there's some meaning to it, and it does use the psychology of those colors to help the user, when on that journey when they're using that piece of marketing collateral, whether it be a website or a prospectus or whatever. So yeah, it's really, really important, and I think really interesting that you bring that psychology of colors into the brief and from the discovery call. And yeah, I love the Rolf's Nursery School colors and the fact that you've used those from the environment that they're in as well, because the children explore their environment. I think that's a really nice touch, and it's interesting to see how you come up with a color palette and what's been important during that discovery call and in the brief, and bring that then into the design. And I love seeing that evolve and develop. So
it also gets you in the right frame of mind, when in that creative process. If you get like a base set of colors, they might change along the creative journey, but if you get that kind of base set of colors, it kind of puts you in the right frame of mind to design that logo according to that kind of feeling.
Yeah,
I think it's the best way to start it.
Dean, what strikes me with the Rolf's color palette that you've shown us is how well those colors work together. But if you choose them through the rationale of their characteristics, what happens if you ended up with 3 or 4 colours that just don't fit? How do you make a palette that works together?
That can take some time, actually. Because you can't just get any 4 or 3 random colors that, bright red and bright yellow and make it work. Sometimes you have to look through the Pantone books and those kind of things if it is going to be uncoated or coated, because they've got completely different shades to them. So uncoated, it's more of a pastel kind of tone to it, whereas coated will be more punchier. So that, again, that also ties into that, like if they're talking about sustainability within their branding and all of that kind of good stuff, you would possibly look at more kind of uncoated tones. I feel like they work a little bit better.
Yeah, a little bit more earthy, perhaps. A little bit more natural feel to them rather than garish, bright, vibrant tones, which are.
If you want to take it to the next level, then you can look at like paper stock and all of that kind of stuff throughout your marketing materials.
Dean,
interesting.
That has been ridiculously fascinating. I can't believe there's so much involved in choosing colours. Having created a website in a past life, I remember choosing colours by thinking, that's the next one along, I'll use that for the next one. It was pretty much the decision-making process that went into it. So for our school viewers and those that are working on school marketing, I think the key there is there's lots to think about, and the colours that you choose can have a huge effect on the response that you're going to get from the marketing that you create. And yeah, okay.
And I think, Mark, as well, if a school is looking at that and they don't necessarily have a budget to do their own, and we should consider that, schools don't always have a budget to get a professional agency to do it. It's so easy now to find a color online and look for a palette that works together. He shouldn't just go and use the next color in line, because that's easy. Actually, if you wanted, if your uniform is purple and you're struggling to know what colors to put with it, you only have to put in a search on your search engine, color palettes based on purple, and a whole array of them come up. So nobody should have those bright greens and reds and blues that you get, the really primary colors anymore. You shouldn't really see those in work.
And the thing is as well, it's not just, sometimes it's not about just choosing a completely different color that goes alongside it. You can choose different shades of that same purple. So it might be that you have, say 25% of that purple, and then you have 50% and then 75%, and then you've got really 4 colors of that same purple that work quite well together. There's many ways to do it.
Fantastic.
Lovely.
Thank you so much. That's been brilliant. Really insightful. And some great tips there for people to use, especially that Google search, David. Thanks for that. That's great. Okay. Well, thanks for your time. Dean, we'll see you again next week for some more top tips on design and getting the most of your school marketing.
Looking forward to
it. Can't wait.
Okay. See you both soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Out of the Blue, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe and leave a comment below, and please ring the bell for notifications. I hope I will see you again soon. Bye!